Corpus Christi is one of the most fascinating celebrations in the Christian tradition, and due to its complexity, it is not celebrated by all denominations. Over the centuries, its true origin and meaning have remained unknown to many. The story of Corpus Christi is often misinterpreted and distorted, even by Christians who do not understand its true meaning. However, from this point on, let's explore what really happened. Without further delay, let's watch the video. The story begins in the year 1263, when Europe was a scene full of intense religious practices and fervent beliefs. In this context, a priest named Peter, originally from Prague in northern Italy, was facing a crisis of faith. He doubted the real presence of Jesus Christ in the Holy Eucharist, a question that deeply troubled his soul. Determined to find answers and strengthen his faith, Peter decided to make a pilgrimage to Rome, the Eternal City. In those times, many faithful traveled to the tombs of the apostles St. Peter and St. Paul, seeking spiritual strengthening and divine graces. Peter thus set out from Prague, passing through several regions on his journey. During his journey, he decided to stop in the town of Bolsena, which was known for its devotion to Saint Christina, a virgin and martyr from the 3rd century. Bolsena, with its immense and beautiful lake, was a place steeped in faith and religious history. Saint Christina, known as the Saint of Misfortunes, was famous for enduring several attempts at martyrdom for her faith. She had been born into a pagan family but converted to Christianity at a young age against the wishes of her parents. Her devotion to the Christian faith aroused the wrath of her father, a man of great standing in the town of Bolsena. Determined to make her renounce her faith, he subjected her to torture and made several assassination attempts. However, according to tradition, all attempts to kill her failed thanks to miraculous interventions. Eventually, St. Christina's father decided to tie a heavy stone to her body and throw it into Lake Bolsena, believing that this would kill her. However, a miracle occurred. Instead of sinking, the stone floated on the surface of the water, supporting St. Christina and preventing her death by drowning. If you are curious to know what happened next, I urge you to like the video, subscribe to the channel and continue following us. As the stone floated, St. Christina remained on it, protected by divine intervention. This miraculous event not only demonstrated God's protection over her, but also left permanent marks. As Christina floated on the stone, her footprints were recorded on it, and to this day, these footprints are tangible evidence of the miracle and a sacred relic for the faithful. Saint Christina's footprints on the stone have come to symbolize her presence and the divine intervention that saved her from certain death. Over time, these footprints became objects of veneration for local Christians and pilgrims who visited Bolsena seeking healing, protection, and spiritual guidance. The miraculous event had such a profound impact that Christina's father, upon witnessing the miracle, collapsed and died. Although she survived, Saint Christina continued to be the target of several martyrdom attempts, but was always saved by divine intervention until her death. Her devotion to Bolsena was intense, and many pilgrims visited her tomb seeking blessings. In an atmosphere of religious fervor, the priest Peter decided to celebrate a Mass, asking for the intercession of Saint Christina to strengthen his faith in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. During the Mass, something truly extraordinary happened. Still struggling with his doubts about the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, Peter raised the consecrated host at the moment of consecration. It was then that the host began to bleed, and the blood flowed, staining his hands and the corporal, the square cloth placed on the altar. This unexpected and miraculous event surprised not only Peter, but also the faithful present, who observed the miracle with amazement and reverence. Overcome with emotion, amazement, and spiritual relief, Peter was unable to continue celebrating Mass. He carefully placed the bloody host on the corporal and, filled with tears of joy and renewed devotion, made his way to the sacristy. As he walked, drops of blood fell to the floor and the altar steps, leaving indelible marks that would be preserved as sacred relics. News of the miracle quickly spread throughout the church, and other priests approached to verify what had happened. Everyone was struck by the visible evidence of the miracle, the blood-stained corporal and the bloody stones. With a heart full of gratitude and still in a state of shock, Peter decided to take the bloody corporal and report the miracle directly to Pope Urban IV, who was in the city of Orvieto, near Bolsena. Upon arriving in Orvieto, Peter told the Pope all the details of what had happened. The Pope, deeply moved by the story, recognized the miracle as a divine sign of the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. He recalled the vision received by Saint Juliana of Liège, who had identified the need for a specific feast day to celebrate the Eucharist. It is important to pause to explain this interesting story in more detail. Saint Juliana of Liège played a crucial role in the origin of the feast of Corpus Christi. In the early 13th century, Juliana, a young nun of 16, began to have mystical visions that revealed to her the need for a special celebration dedicated to the Eucharist. In one of these visions, she saw a bright white disc with a dark spot on one side. This image deeply intrigued her, and she spent many years in prayer seeking to understand its meaning. After a long period of spiritual discernment, Juliana understood that the white disc represented the Church and her devotion to the Eucharist, while the dark spot symbolized the absence of a specific feast day to properly honor the Blessed Sacrament. Although the celebration of Holy Thursday, which commemorated the Eucharist, already existed, this feast was associated with the sadness of the Passion of Christ. Juliana understood that Jesus wanted a joyful and solemn feast, dedicated exclusively to the glory of the Eucharist. Reluctant to make her visions public, Juliana hesitated for 20 years until she finally found the courage to share her experience with a trusted priest named Jacques Pantaleon. He firmly believed in Juliana's visions and encouraged her to spread her message. However, as time passed, Juliana died and her visions were forgotten. Years later, Jacques Pantaleon, the only person who knew about Juliana's visions, became Pope Urban IV. Upon hearing the account of the priest Peter, Urban IV was deeply moved and immediately recognized the importance of the miracle. With a keen spiritual intuition and remembering the vision of Saint Juliana of Liège, who had predicted the need for a feast dedicated to the Eucharist, Pope Urban IV realized that the miracle that had occurred was a divine sign. Determined to act quickly, he sought to confirm the authenticity of the event and initiate the institution of a new liturgical feast. To verify the veracity of the miracle, the Pope summoned a group of trusted theologians and experts, among them the renowned St. Thomas Aquinas and St. Bonaventure. These men, renowned for their wisdom and holiness, were sent to Bolsena to investigate the event and examine the relics. St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Bonaventure, and other theologians carried out a meticulous analysis of the evidence. They studied the blood-stained corporal and the bloody stones and gathered testimonies from the faithful who had witnessed the miracle. After verifying the authenticity of the event, the procession of theologians began to return to Orvieto, taking with them the precious relics, including the blood-stained corporal. News of the miracle had already spread, and as the procession departed Bolsena, many local faithful, moved and reverent, began to follow them. The crowd grew as they advanced, with people from several neighboring towns and cities joining the procession. As the procession approached Orvieto, Pope Urban IV, informed of the success of the verification and the approach of the miraculous relics, decided to go out to meet the procession. The Pope, accompanied by clergy and dignitaries of the Church, got out of his ceremonial vehicle as he approached the bridge where the theologians and the procession of the faithful were standing. As they approached the bridge, the procession was marked by a moment of great solemnity and emotion. Pope Urban IV, wearing his pontifical vestments, knelt in adoration of the Eucharist, represented by the relics of the miracle. He reverently received the blood-stained corporal and the consecrated host, and, together with the procession, began to walk towards the city of Orvieto. This event became known as the First Eucharistic Procession, which would become a central element in the celebration of Corpus Christi. Convinced by the theologians' verification and the spiritual depth of the event, Pope Urban IV decided to institute a solemn feast to honor the Eucharist. In 1264, he issued the bull Transiturus, decreeing the establishment of the Feast of Corpus Christi. The bull emphasized the importance of reaffirming faith in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, especially at a time when various heresies were questioning this doctrine. The Pope saw the feast as a way to strengthen the faith of the faithful and promote Eucharistic devotion. He also emphasized the role of Eucharistic miracles, such as that of Bolsena, as divine signs that confirm the truth of the real presence of Christ in the consecrated bread and wine. After decreeing the feast, Pope Urban IV took steps to ensure that the new celebration would be marked by a rich and spiritually profound liturgy. Recognizing the importance of a rite that was appropriate for capturing the essence and glory of the Eucharist, the Pope called upon some of the most renowned theologians of his time to compose the hymns and prayers that would be used at the solemnity. Among the theologians called upon were St. Thomas Aquinas and St. Bonaventure, both intellectual giants of the Church. When the time came to present the hymns, all the theologians gathered in the presence of the Pope. St. Thomas Aquinas, renowned for his erudition and spirituality, was the first to present his composition. He began by reciting the Lauda Sion, a hymn that, through elaborate verses, expresses belief in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist and the reverence due to this sacrament. His performance was so impressive and inspiring that all the other theologians present fell silent, deeply moved by the perfection and spirituality of St. Thomas's words. With great humility, each of them acknowledged the superiority of St. Thomas's work and tore up their own manuscripts, agreeing that his hymn impeccably captured the spirit and purpose of the new feast. Thus, Lauda Sion became the official hymn of the Feast of Corpus Christi. This event not only highlighted the extraordinary theological and poetic skill of St. Thomas Aquinas, but also highlighted the unity and humility among the greatest theologians of the Church, who recognized that his work was most suited to glorify the Eucharist. The first celebration of the Feast of Corpus Christi, instituted by Pope Urban IV, was a moment of profound devotion and joy for the Church. The feast was planned with great care, with the aim of emphasizing the importance of the Eucharist and strengthening faith in the real presence of Christ in the Blessed Sacrament. The inaugural celebration featured a solemn Eucharistic procession, an event that would become a central tradition of the feast. During the procession, the Blessed Sacrament was carried through the streets in a monstrance, allowing the faithful to worship and honor the presence of Christ in the Eucharist. The city of Orvieto, where Pope Urban IV was temporarily residing, became the epicenter of this celebration. Orvieto's importance in the history of Corpus Christi was highlighted by the construction of a magnificent cathedral designed to house and preserve the blood-stained corporal, the main relic of the miracle of Bolsena. The Cathedral of Orvieto, known as the Duomo of Orvieto, began construction in 1290, a few years after the feast was instituted. This cathedral is a masterpiece of Italian Gothic architecture with its richly decorated facade and impressive interiors. The first celebration of Corpus Christi and the construction of the Cathedral of Orvieto are interconnected events that established a lasting legacy of Eucharistic devotion, commemorating the miracle of Bolsena and the vision of Saint Juliana of Liège. These events continue to inspire and strengthen the faith of many Christians, reaffirming the centrality of the Eucharist in the life of the Church and in the spirituality of the faithful. It is important to note that some religions choose not to celebrate the Feast of Corpus Christi for a variety of reasons. Some have their own religious beliefs and practices that do not include the celebration of the Eucharist or the veneration of the host and wine as the body and blood of Christ. In addition, there may be theological and interpretative differences regarding the nature of the Eucharist and what is written in the Scriptures. However, it is essential to remember that, regardless of religious differences, the essential thing is to have faith in God and practice the principles of love, compassion, and mutual respect. Respect for religious diversity and the search for peace and understanding between different traditions are values that transcend religious boundaries and are fundamental to harmonious coexistence. To build a more tolerant and inclusive world, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to the channel, activate the bell to receive notifications, leave your like and click on one of the 2 videos that will appear to continue watching. Hugs, and may God be with you.